Idea.
All right then. Are we all right just to go straight into it, gents? Then?
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's do that.
that cool. Welcome to Bow Ties Sometimes Cool. Myself, Ashley, and Ed and James. Good evening, Ed.
Evening, Ash. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good. It's nice and sunny outside, so I'm enjoying it. And good evening, James. How are you? Right?
I'm splendid, gentlemen. Glad we're all doing well.
Good stuff. And it's a bank holiday weekend. Although I've said that the rate that our episodes are going out, who knows what bank holiday the weekend that is? That could be next year. Anyway, such is life. So this evening we're going to be talking about another fantastic, possibly. Well, no, that's what we're going to debate, I suppose. Bond film. Edward, what Bond film is it?
Tonight, gentlemen, we are going to be discussing Diamonds Are Forever.
Hey, we've just been before we came on. We just listening to Shirley Bassey singing it, and yeah, she was good. Second one she did, wasn't it? Second Bond thing.
Mm-hmm.
What was the next? What was the next?
Moonraker,
Absolutely,
which I
absolutely.
believe she hates. She won't sing it live, will she?
I don't know. Well, maybe that's a godsend.
Yeah, it is by far her weakest, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
a bit of a dirge.
Yeah, Goldfinger. She peaked with Goldfinger. Not well, actually. This
No,
isn't
no,
a
this
bad.
one's better.
Do you reckon?
Mm,
Oh, this one's better. It's iconic.
yeah.
Not the Goldfingers. The
Well,
disco version of Moonraker on the end credits is to die for. I love that.
yeah,
I'll
that's
listen
true.
to that all day long.
That is true. That is true. Well, the reason that we're doing this one is because we were talking about favorite Bond films and what have you, and I put mine on the table and this that, and the other. Everyone ignored it, but we ended up talking about Ed's, and this is like one of Ed's favorites. This is not the favorite, but what top five, Ed?
Yeah, top 10, top five some days. I'll tell you what it is for me. Like last week we did For Your Eyes Only, which is my favorite Bond, being one of my least favorite Bond films. This is turning on its head. This is my least favorite Bond in one of my favorite Bond films.
Okay, all right, yeah,
Yeah,
okay, got
yeah.
it. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll leave you, Ed, because I think yeah, we always like to finish on a positive. I'm not saying that I don't know what James's take on it is. So I'll tell you what,
Oh,
we'll go to James first. In actual fact,
oh,
then, if that's okay with
right
you.
then. It's always good. Very welcome. Right then, Diamonds Are Forever. First off, I shall quantify everything I'm about to say by saying I always have a great time watching it. It's a film you can't help but love. Um, However, it's riddled with flaws and feels unfinished for a variety of reasons. And arguably, it was given the enormous amount of it that never got filmed for budgeting reasons, thanks to Sean's salary. Um, but it's great fun. And like we said with some of the others that we talked about recently, I don't know what order the shows are going to come out, but we often talk about how some of the Bond films are tonally mismatched within themselves. And I do think this is one of those. It's that awkward era of the Bond franchise where they were trying to work out what to do with it and if there was still a future with it. And we've had the experiment of George, and then he left his seven-film contract unsigned, and there was a huge panic, and various names connected with the role before the distributor said, no, you need to get Sean back. And they did. And then Sean did one and never again, in inverted commas. Roger came in. They had a couple of films where they were basically trying to get him to do a Sean with a raised eyebrow, and it didn't work out. And it wasn't until Spy Who Loved Me where it really found out where he wanted to be in the 70s and on. And this is the film. It's an important film because it's the one that showed there was still life in the old dog yet, that people would still come out and pay money to watch a Bond film. It did a lot of good business. Sean looks considerably happier, again, possibly because of the salary, than he did in You Only Live Twice, which I said before, I just have a hard time with You Only Live Twice. He looks happier. He looks more at ease with himself. But he's noticeably aged, and it's probably unfair to point that out, but he has. Um, blokes used to age quicker in those days, and he looked like Alex Salmond at several points throughout the film. I think there were several choices that were wrong. His weight noticeably fluctuates throughout the picture, which I'm not criticizing him at all for having a paunch or anything, but considering the film's supposed to take place over a few days, it can be a little bit distracting. His hairpiece isn't right. But he's having a whale of a time. He's probably his most relaxed since Goldfinger, and he does a bang up job. And it's him at his best. There are several points in the walk across the the balcony or the roof edge when he's going up to Willard White's apartment. That's Connery's Bond all over. That's Connery and Goldfinger levels of confidence, where he's just smelling the carnation in his lapel and walking. He really does look the part there. So he's fine. Bond is fine. The story basically is okay, but the editing is all over the place. We know the famous faux pas about the flipping car that we had a laugh about last week. It's just lazy filmmaking. It's bizarre why they left that in there. The moon buggy chase bugs me because there's no reason for it to be there. Why is he in a moon buggy? Why is there astronauts on a soundstage in Willard White's a business? It just jars when it comes on. The ending, which I'm sure we'll get to, is disappointing because it's a climax without a climax. Blofeld being knocked into a wall and we don't really know what's happened to him since then is very disappointing because you want to see some kind of confrontation, and it's not quite there. Blofeld himself, I don't want to say this in the way that it will sound, probably the weakest incarnation of Blofeld in the series for me until we get to the Craig era, but that's a conversation for another time. But he is enormously entertaining. Who doesn't love Charles Gray in anything? He's the kind of man you will watch all day long. I'd watch him in an empty room, sat on a chair, just staring back at the camera for 3 hours. I'd be happy. I think he was good. He's so entertaining. He's got a real charm about how he approaches the role. He does it comedically. You can't imagine, in as much as you can't imagine Donald Pleasance being in on Her Majesty's Secret Service, I can't imagine Telly Savalas playing Blofeld in this one, because he just makes this interpretation of the character his own, and it's really entertaining. I personally like to think that Blofeld always dresses in drag when he doesn't have his Nero collar on, and that's simply his way of relaxation. I think that's amazing, and it should be canon. And I think the notable for Mr. Winter, Mr. Kidd, two obviously gay characters, are not dealt with in the carry-on style way one might have expected the Bond era of the 70s to have dealt with them. They are. There are moments at the end, the way they kill them off is probably played for laughs, although the fireball's a little bit gruesome. But for the main part, they are two very ruthless and very serious and very competent killers, and they're presented very, very well. They're just two characters who are bad and evil and happen to be in a relationship. So I think that's a real positive for size for the time. Jill St. John's amazing. I think she pulls that role off really well, and some of her dialogue with Connery is great. And I remember it being the first time in the series, I think, where there's this suggestion that everybody in the world knows who James Bond is. When she pulls out the case of mistaken identities. Oh my God, you just killed James Bond, and how useful a spy is he now? If we all know that this is a guy who goes out saving the world all the time. So there are elements of it that I find annoying and disjointed. It is. One hates to say it is badly edited overall as a picture, but it is so much fun, and there are so many amazing sequences in it. The funeral sequence is amazing. The dialogue with the gangsters in the car is fun, and that really is a scary moment when the flames are coming down. So a mixed bag, but one you can't help but enjoy. I would say just one other thing. I don't like Vegas as a venue for a Bond film. Vegas is a very seedy place, and I don't know whether I don't imagine actually they were intending to juxtapose him in quite this way. But the images of Bond in a Vegas casino where people are half naked and wearing lounge suits or t-shirts and shorts, and he's there in his white dinner jacket. Maybe it's to present him as Bond projects class wherever or injects class wherever he is, but it just kind of emphasizes the point that maybe he's out of date. And if that was what Lazenby had criticized it as being, or on the verge of being, when he refused the contracts, it seemed an odd choice. So yeah, I don't like Vegas, but that's a minor quibble. And I don't like that it's not a direct sequel to Majesty's, but I suppose it couldn't have been. And at that point, I'll shut up.
So generally, really, really positive.
It is because I enjoy it. It's not like You Only Live Twice, where it's a slog, sorry, to get through. I'll notice the flaws in Diamonds, but it's a great laugh. I love it every time.
Like, yeah, I watched it last like week, was it, or maybe the week before, and it's an enjoyable little caper, really. Yes, there are little flaws with it, but the film goes by quickly. There's never a boring moment in it. Connery, I do now. I got to be careful what I say here, because this could be almost a bit two-faced. But you see, Roger was looking too old towards the end, but somehow he gets away with it. But with Sean, it just doesn't seem to work as well. Maybe it was because Sean's Bond was a bit more physical. Maybe Roger's Bond was always, well, comical. Well, I mean, when he started, he was actually, I mean, Roger was actually older than Sean anyway. So thinking about it, when he started playing Bond, he was a much older, he was older in the first place. So maybe it's just what you get used to. But yeah, Roger's always used to be a comedy quip and a bit of tech, really, not overly physical, apart from the old karate chop and what have you. Well, so in that sense, it doesn't quite work. A bit funny in some places. I mean, when in Kid, think about it. I love them actually, but they spoke. Are they supposed to be Blofeld's henchmen? I don't know. The thing is, they're never actually in a scene with Blofeld. They're totally detached. They're in the story, and they're a good little addition, but it doesn't really sort of explain how they're intertwined, really. But anyway, does that really matter? Apart from the fact that the guys that played them basically convinced them that they were convinced Connery that they were not necessarily a couple, but like gay and what have you. And like Connery was like, yeah, fine. And then a few years later, I think it was Bruce Glover was on a plane and he was chatting up one of the air hostesses, and he heard barking down the airplane, "You son of a bitch!" Because Connery had realised he'd been handing him on for all these years. But there we go. Connery, yeah, look, smiling here. What was his about 1.2 million, I think, for this? I thought somebody told that he got paid, gave something away. I don't know. Anyway, yeah,
I think he gave all of it away.
I
think he established a foundation with it. So yeah, my jibes about smiling because of his salary are perhaps a little unfair,
but it was like that. The overall budget was only like 7.6 million, so that's like quite a lot of your budget, like a massive part of your budget going on just paying one man. But obviously they thought it was worth it, and it was to try and save things, really, wasn't it? In truth, probably. Having said that, though, I think perhaps he was smiling because apparently he really loved it in Vegas. He even did the slot machines. In fact, there's some scenes apparently that got delayed because he was collecting his winnings. So apparently he partied hard when he was there, and then when he wasn't filming, he was not either partying or sleeping and out for the count. I think he made most of his time in Vegas. But that said, yeah, really, no, I really, really like it. I do like it. The moon scene that you're referring to, maybe a bit lazy. I think it was just thrown in because at that time there was a constant conspiracy theory, which is still ongoing, really, that the moon landing was faked. So I think they were just trying to be sort of throw things in, but they don't always make sense. Yeah. Do you know, gents? Let's forget Never Say Never Again, for argument's sake. So, well, this is certainly the last time he played Bond for the Eon for Curry Broccoli. What was the last scene that he filmed?
I don't know.
No, the last scene that he filmed as James Bond was the coffin scene in the funeral. So
Was it?
literally, although I'm not sure it was necessarily filmed intentionally that way, but yeah, his final scene was almost a death scene. That was like his final farewell. Yeah, yeah.
That's great. I like that. I like that.
On
Oh
August the
yeah.
13th, 1970, whatever, 70. Hang on, what would it have been? No, I think it was 71. When did this come out? Let's have a look.
They were normally summer releases, weren't they? I don't remember.
I'll
Yeah.
double check on that right now. And whilst
Excellent.
hang on, we will shorten this in the edit. So the actual release date of this was no, that would make sense. Yeah, okay, right, yeah. So his last scene as Bond, I'm going to stick with my original assertion, was the 13th of August, which is a Friday, 1971, because this film came out in December 71.
Ah,
And we know in Bond terms, in that time, that was like ages. I mean, now that would be them just trying to design the poster, probably those 4 months. But yeah, in those days, that was ages. So yeah, finished it in August, out in December. So there we go. Maybe that's why the editing was a bit dodgy. Who knows?
it just bugs me, the editing. It's so near to being a really, really good film. But the whole thing sequence with Plenty O'Toole, who gets a lot of recognition as a Bond girl, considering her entire subplot was junked. You just have that little bit of her being chucked out the window. Um, the stuff with her being, murdered, how she finds out where Tiffany lives. It's all junked. They just make bad choices. And the original ending sounded brilliant. Chasing Blofeld across, was it a salt mine or something? They were going to have a fist fight. Can't imagine Charles Gray in a fist fight, but it would have been fun to see. And instead, we just got this kind of half-assed, oh shit, we've run out of money ending. So never mind.
There's a few things, isn't there? I read somewhere, although this is totally an aside, that Gert Frobe was going to come back to play
Hmm.
Goldfinger's twin brother in this one, but
I
that
can
didn't
imagine
materialize.
that. I mean, the whole thing is basically an attempt to redo Goldfinger, isn't it? You got the same director. I think was the writer the same? I can't remember. Um, Connery back, Shirley Bassey back. So that sounds like something they would have done. Absolutely. Um,
And you
Interesting.
mentioning Lana Wood there. I mean, she would, yeah, when because she did Playboy, didn't she? Which is basically exactly is basically why she got the job, really. Um, so, but they promised her, don't worry, we'll film it discreetly and what have you. There won't be anyone there until she realized, hang on, wait a minute, or maybe when she got there. This is filmed in Vegas, the city that doesn't sleep. Everyone's up at night. Everyone's there. In fact, it would have been better if it was filmed during the day. So anyway, so there we are. But I like it. It's a nice little caper. Uh, I like using that phrase this evening. So it was budget was $7.2 million apparently, and in the box office it did 116. So for those guys, that was a nice little return, wasn't it? Very nice. Ready for the next one. Now we're going to pass over to Ed. Ed has pulled some strange faces over the last sort of 10, 15 minutes. I'm not sure
Hmm.
whether he's in pain or whether it was disgust. So now Ed is going to give us the reason why Diamonds Are Forever is a fantastic Bond film. Oh, and then I'm going to put in a couple of clips. Right, do you know towards the end, I've got a bit of an issue with the editing, yeah? Like you say, Blofeld, it goes to nothing really. So he gets dropped down in the water. Then when they bring him back up, the whole thing's turned around, which is probably not impossible, but fine. Then he just gets swung back and forth into a bloody building. Yeah, great, fantastic. And then Jill St. John comes along. She's wearing one outfit. Then when she goes over to Bond at the crane, same outfit, but totally different color. I'll show you later, guys. Anyway, back to Ed.
Right. I think it's possibly the most important Bond film of all of them.
Hang on, wait a
And I'll,
minute.
t-
Whoa, 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 whoa. That's a statement and a half, isn't it, Ed?
and
Anyway,
I'll, I'll,
sorry.
t- and I'll
Go
tell
on.
you for why now. So the series has been going on really, really well. Great. Honor Majesties comes along, which for me, up to this point, was the absolute high watermark. It still is, possibly sometimes my top Bond film. No, it's usually top two or three. It's a phenomenal film. But where do you go after it? Where can you possibly go after something as good as On Her Majesty's Secret Service? And with the crisis with Lazenby, with him making all these quite valid criticisms of a series that had been running for what, 6, 7 years at the time, potentially getting a little bit long in the tooth. I think it was time for a change of emphasis, a change of tone, a change of direction. New decade coming up, new direction. Now, there's a phrase which describes the later Avengers series as spy-fi, and I don't know if they had been watching it, but I think it felt to me watching it last night that the team behind it had been watching a lot of late Emma Peel and Tara King Avengers because it felt like an event. It felt like an extended episode of the Avengers, and I think that's what they were going for. The more fantastical, again, use the term spy-fi um, take on Bond. It was almost like a soft reboot of the whole franchise. I know we had Sean Connery back, which reasons understandable. He's a sellable, bankable name. Lazenby at the time was seen as a flop. With hindsight, not so much at all. But so it almost feels like a soft reboot of what James Bond was to bring it into a new decade. Um, so what have we got? We've got the gun barrel, great music, great. The pre credits were sort of, you don't have to have seen On Her Majesty's really to understand that here's James Bond. He's hunting a villain down. Long-time people will know that he's hunting down Ernst Stavro Blofeld because he's responsible for the murder of his wife. It's never alluded to in the film, but it's a nice touch for people who followed the series. Theme tune, I think it's Bassie's best. I think it's a cracking Bond theme tune. It really is an amazing Bond theme tune, and you've got that little sting that's in it all the way through it. That do 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 do. That sort of sticks in your head all the way through it. You've alluded to Mr. Winter, Mr. Kidd, iconic henchman villains, flesh-crawlingly creepy, nasty pieces of work. I mean, pure, pure evil. The pair of them, when they get the little old lady who runs the school somewhere in Africa to take the diamonds to Amsterdam. They've obviously cold-bloodedly killed her, and then they take pictures of the canal, saying, "Well, she did want to take pictures back of the canals to the children." And it's black humor. It's also a it's the first time we could potentially say James Bond had been camp. This felt like a Roger Moore film without Roger Moore. Sean was delivering the quippy sort of dialogues, not quite with a raised eyebrow, not quite with the deadly seriousness he had in his earlier years, but there was a great deal of humor injected into this, and it was played a lot more camp, big scale, over the top, whatever you want to call it. Austin Powers parodied it 25 years later, but this got there first. James, you've alluded to Charles Gray. I think he's my favorite Blofeld. He just oozes charm. He oozes charisma. There's that wonderful scene in Willard White's penthouse where there's two Blofelds, and Bond's way of trying to find out which was the real one. He throws the cat at one of them. There's two cats as well. It's just little touches like that where Blofeld tells him to go down the lift. Bond thinks, I know what he's going to do. He's going to drop the bottom of the lift. No, he gasses him. It's just little. It plays with the audience's expectations. I was talking to my friend Geraint was over the other day, and I was saying we're doing this on Friday. He points out his favorite bit in all of Diamonds Are Forever, which gets him every time, is when the elephant plays the slot machine. And the elephant pulls the slot machine, and three elephants come up, and the elephant hoots and wins lots of money. And that's the sort of tone, that's where it's at. Moon Buggy, interesting, and noticed it last night. I do think it's sort of alluding to the sort of whole Moongate thing which was round at the time. I don't know if this was before or after the film Capricorn 1. But it's that type of thing. But again, putting the silly campness into it, the security guards say, Bond, he's over there by the rocks. but the astronaut's still moving in slow motion like the moon, trying to chase him. That chase where with the moon buggy and the little bikes after him, I can imagine John Pertwee having been in his element doing that. It feels like something that would have happened in the Pertwee era on Doctor Who. I can imagine the Master trapping the Doctor and him nicking a moon buggy and running away, and all and, the guards chasing on those little bikes, similar to the Day of the Daleks.
Do you know
So
though? Sorry to interrupt you there, but
yeah,
I was watching it, and do you know when Sean? That yeah, they're on that little bike, and he comes out, and he actually jumps off the bike as the bike's still moving, and I thought, oh, that's considering the fact he's looking a bit older and why, still quite sprightly. Probably wouldn't get that these days. Well, Craig would do it, but I mean, if he was like Craig was his age, it would definitely be a stuntman. But I was like, bloody hell, Sean, yeah, you do your stuff here. Sorry to interrupt. But
no, you
I'm
chose.
actually gonna put a clip in because it's so impressive.
Yeah, but it's a film with, it's one of those films I remember. This and Live and Let Die are the ones I remember for one from Christmases when I was a child. It always seemed to be on. And I think back in the day, I didn't realize there was more than one James Bond. I just thought it was James Bond because they were on so infrequently and it was just James Bond. And, all the bits in this, like say, Winston Kid, the moon buggy, the coffin in the crematorium, getting trapped in the tunnel as well with the rat with the thing electrocuting. Again, the two Blofelds, the oil rig, the diamond thing, which is going to blow up the world. It's just got for me. It's just got everything a Bond film should have, apart from Roger Moore. If it was Roger Moore in this film, I think it would have knocked A View to a Kill off my top spot. But I just think it's a delight. It's a hoot, is the way I describe it. It's a delightfully daft caper and romp of a film from people who've been watching too many Tara King episodes of the Avengers. It's a soft reboot which brought the franchise into a new decade and gave it a new boost of energy. It was almost like On Her Majesty's closed the book on the 60s Bond. This is a bold statement of what 70s Bond was going to be all about. And Rog sort of refined that as it went on. But if it wasn't for Diamonds Are Forever and the decisions they took tonally in this one, I don't think we'd have got Roger Moore as we know and love him. Um, Interesting, James, you saying about the sorry, gone blank. The place with the casinos. Las
Vegas.
Vegas. Las Vegas. I was thinking that last night. It seemed too down market and sleazy for Bond because, like I said, he's dressed in his white tuxedo again. The best Bonds wear white tuxedos, and he's dressed and everyone else is in shorts and Hawaiian shirts, and they look like rednecks on holiday. Whereas he's still dressed as if he's in the top places in Monte Carlo with the creme de la creme of society, and he's it's say almost showing in a way he's a dinosaur. This is how the decade is now. The rules have changed. It's not gentlemen spies anymore. The villains have changed. The world has changed in the last 10 years, and Bond has to adapt and change with it, and he does adapt and change with it. I mean, you've even got, I'm not saying, but anyways, it's a feminist film because I don't like Connery's Bond. I think Connery's Bond's attitude to women stinks more than any of the Bond there. But you've got Haley watched it with me last night, and her favorite part of it is Bambi and Thumper kicking the living daylights out of him because she really doesn't like Connery. She likes Sean Connery. She thinks he's a great actor. I mean, one of her favorite films ever is Robin and Marion. She loves Connery, but she hates Connery's Bond. Haley's a massive Dalton fan. She loves Dalton, but Connery's Bond, she was cheering on Bambi and Thumper. But having two very strong female bodyguards like that who are working for the villain, who could basically take on Bond and pretty much take him out. Again, with the attitude towards a same-sex couple for the 70s. I mean, for the 80s that'd have been progressive, but for the 70s, but especially with the type of film Bond still was at the time, it's very, very, very forward thinking. Jill St. John, fabulous as Tiffany Case. It's almost insulting to call her a Bond girl because she's not a damsel in distress. She's part of she's integral to what's happening with the diamond smuggling. So she's almost a villain who redeems herself. Q's fantastic. Q cheating the slot machines, just absolutely brilliant. It's interesting as well. The film I said about with my critique of For Your Eyes Only about the film stock in Eyes Only looking off and wrong. It's funny, this one, at the beginning, where Bond's taken by M to meet the chap from the diamond place, it looks like a 60s film. The film stock is very, very 60s. As it goes on, it gets more of a sort of less technicolor and more grainy 70s. I don't know if that was a deliberate directorial choice to show the sort of the movement of the character and the movement of what's happening to away from the stuffy sort of London scenes to the more so obviously to Las Vegas and America, but interesting how the film stock sort of changed as the film went on. Um, and yeah, I just find this film an absolute riot from beginning to end, and that's about all I have to say about that.
Now, the thing that none of us have mentioned, yeah, which is, is it because we don't want to mention it? I don't know. Who knows? You can't turn a Mustang from one set of wheels to the other set of wheels down an
Roger
alley.
Moore, Roger Moore could.
Yeah, Roger Moore could. Yeah, well, actually, yeah. All right, well, let Sean off because, yeah, Roger could. But
that whole car chase in the Mustang is possibly the most poorly edited chase of the whole series. And I think a lot of that, I know that in the car park in particular, it's just a little bit pedestrian. Not trying to make a pun there with it being a car chase, but it's just there's no excitement to it despite what's going on. I think perversely, because I think John Barry, wrote one of the best themes of the whole series. The score isn't that exciting in the places you want it to be exciting. So things like the car chase is just kind of happening. And yeah, I can't get over the car flip. I'm sorry. Take your point. I meant to mention about Bambi and Thumper because they're brilliant. But that's again, it's just another example of what he slightly gets wrong. It's so close to being perfect. And then these two women who kick the shit out of him, he just holds underwater. And it really, really okay. They're completely incapable, these two athletic, extremely powerful gymnasts, of removing your hand and swimming up to the top. So it is annoying. And his pink tie in that scene winds me up. I detest that tie, not because it's pink. I love pink. I wear pink. But because it's just an abomination of a tie. And that's possibly the most offensive part of the film. But those are very small points because it is, as Ed said, it's a hoot. It's an absolute joy to watch. And keep going back to it, but I think the treatment of Winton Kid is so good because the film itself is so high camp. I think you're quite right, Ed. It's the first time they've overtly gone camp. I think Terence Young probably had a little bit of tongue in cheek when he was directing the first few, but it was more or less played straight. And this time is the first time they really camp it up. And in a film like that, to then treat two openly gay characters with respect, I think is a hell of a progressive move. So, yeah, it stands out for that. And you were quite right. It has. I won't say it's the most important in the series, but it's certainly one of the most important because without proving that actually people will still come and watch Bond, it would have died then. There wouldn't have been another one.
I mean, for me, it's sort of like Spearhead from space, if you know what I mean. It's to use a Doctor Who allusion. One question for you, James, because you're the man, the literary Bond man. Does it bear any resemblance at all to the novel?
Not especially.
No.
The relevance. I mean, the novel's more or less simply about a diamond smuggling gang called the Spangled Mob in America. So aside from it being set in America and Felix being in it, the similarities are quite small. I think if I remember rightly, Diamonds Are Forever, the book, was the first time Bond drank Bollinger canonically. Before that, he was I can't remember what he drank in the books. I think it was probably Dom Perignon. Maybe Moet. Sorry, that's a very much of a side point. But no, the plot is, aside from it being a diamond smuggling caper, it was like it was a gangster story, really. So it's quite fantastical, but that's what you got from 60s, early 70s Bond. So, and I think, as you pointed out before, Ed, Winton Kid are in the books. They're members of the Spangled Mob, and If memory serves, there was a really beautifully written. Fleming could write really quite touchingly sometimes, which is surprising when you think of his views on life, his philosophies. He wrote some really beautiful things, and it was a description of a scorpion killing a bee, if I remember rightly, and it has been a long time since I read it. And I'm assuming that that's what's then been used with the scorpion when Kid killed the dentist in the opening scenes. So there are elements taken out of the book. Felix had quite a big role in the book, and canonically, it was set after Live and Let Die. So Live and Let Die was the second book, and in that, the character suffers the shark attack that you would have in License to Kill in the movies. So by the time of Diamonds Are Forever in the book, he's got an artificial arm and leg, and he's working for Pinkerton's detective agency rather than the CIA, as he would do then throughout the rest of his appearances. So there are elements of it. That's the point, actually. What do we think about Felix in this one? Lots of Felixes. I suppose personally, he's fine. He's inoffensive. I find him quite funny, actually. Some of his little back and forth with Bond is quite amusing, but I gather from fandom he's not very well received. But I think he's fine, and I think some of that sarcasm works quite well. I don't really buy the idea of him being, a physical agent on a par with Bond as he was reported to be. But I do get the idea of them having a laugh together.
Yeah, I like the character. I mean, sorry, not the character. I like the portrayal, I should say. That said, though, it could have just been anyone, though. I mean, I suppose you could say that of Felix's character, but if he didn't say "Oh, Felix," that could have just been any character, I guess. I mean, that's the only downside. I think maybe he just gets overlooked because not that it's a bad portrayal, it's just that maybe portrayal, but maybe some of the other ones are better. That's all. So
yeah, there's no real reason for him to be there other than it's Connery back.
Yeah.
So we'll have Felix back as well, and I'll never understand why not just why they recast as often as they did, but why they would cast such wildly differently looking people into that role. So there's not even any semblance of continuity there. In other areas they went to such great pains to suggest that this was the same guy with the same people around him. So
of course, there is
holes. No, sorry, I was going to say, but picking up on that though, there are holes in the series like that, isn't there? Really, I mean, you think about it, Blofeld, they've just killed, previous film killed his wife.
Well, that's the thing.
I think he'd be a bit more narked, really, when he found him.
Yeah, I think it's controversial. I don't think it's ever been officially talked about in those terms, but I think the intention was to pretend Majesty's never happened. And there's suggestions that why the first scene is set in Japan, to suggest it's come straight after You Only Live Twice. I don't necessarily buy into that was intentional. It was, purely coincidence, really. But they weren't asked at all about suggesting this was a continuation. At all. There's no Irma Bunce you would have expected to be there. There's no notion of it being revenge other than this is a bad chap and I'm after him. That first, pre-credits where he sends the double into the mud bath. There's no satisfaction. He has a little bit of a smile. Welcome to Hell, Blofeld. You would, if it had been written to be a continuation, that would have been a lot different. And it wasn't until Spy Who Loved Me that there's any suggestion that Majesty's ever actually happened and that he was married. By which time, I suppose, attitudes towards George and Majesty's had probably cooled. It's a shame because I would have loved to see Peter Hunt and Lazenby do a follow-up, but it wasn't to be. Diamonds would have been an extremely different picture if Peter Hunt was in charge of it. And maybe the series wouldn't have continued for as long as it did if he was, but I think he would have made a damn good movie. But hey, pie in the sky.
Now, Ed, sorry, I interrupted you before. Apologies.
That's okay. I'm just saying, of course, there is the other possibility that Felix Leiter is just the name given to the top agent of the CIA, in the same way James Bond is the name given to the top agent of the Universal Exports.
Yeah,
That's
You're
a
not
hill I
giving up
will.
on codename theory, are you?
That's as a hill I will die on. It all works because the last Bond's wife was killed. This is someone he's off now on indefinite leave, so they brought the old Bond back.
Do you know what?
Hmm.
I think that theory helps explain some bad editing, bad stories, screenplays, and other things. But it is definitely the same person, Ed. Right, moving on. So,
Shall we do a show on codename theory one day? We'll
yeah,
just have it out.
yeah, yeah. We'll put it out there. Put it out there as a tweet. Put it out there as a tweet. Is 007? No, is James Bond the code name? And if it is, why has he got a house up in Scotland with his father's grave? But there we are, Ed. I'm sure it's the same. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Um, Listen, there's loads of like errors. Really, I think it's just because you know what I feel like sometimes they weren't even doing a story arc, were they? In those days, it was just like
No.
let's make a great Bond film, and if there is a bit of continuity, then great. But I mean, if it's not, it doesn't matter. Nowadays, that'd be like, well, because Craig had to have a whole story arc from beginning to end. We didn't need to end it, Daniel Craig. It was fine. You could have left it open ended. You wanted your moment of glory, anyway. But yeah, so there we go. There we go. I'm not bitter about it though.
Do
Daniel,
you like a moment, Ash?
I just a few deep breaths, really. I'm just hoping that if it ever happens, when they reboot it, they just forget about everything. They forget everything that's happened. Ed's got a lovely little theory about how they can continue the series about essentially through storytelling, sort of. But I just would like them to start afresh, as if it never happened. There's so many issues. Go on.
Yeah. Shall I say it?
Yeah, go on.
Go on, tell us.
Okay. So my theory. So at the end of No Time to Die, you see James Bond's wife and daughter, or partner and daughter, driving off, and all I really think it needs, right at the very, very beginning, is those two characters and the mum saying, "I'm going to tell you a story about your dad. He was a hero. He was called James Bond, and this is one of the things that have happened to him." There you go.
Oh, that'd be beautiful.
Doesn't matter that it looks different because it's all of the little kid's imagination. Needs to be said once. And there you go.
I think that works in the sense of if you just did it once, yeah, on
Yeah.
the first of the reboot with the new actor, you wouldn't need to do it again then. But that would be a way of segueing into spinning off into the adventures. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Bond is essentially set in this time frame now, isn't it? Like previous Bonds weren't necessarily set in a particular time, apart from the fact they were filmed in a certain way.
Yeah.
But there was no real time references. Whereas if you look at like No Time to Die, you look at Vesper's gravestone, it's very much set now in 2000 and so on. So they've kind of made it so it is now and it's happening now. And I suppose they'd have to from the tech viewpoint, I guess. But yeah, that would be a way they could keep the continuity, keep it going in terms of a timeline. And then it's like every other Bond film in the future is almost like a flashback, isn't it?
I think that's what Dalton wanted to do in Living Daylights, and I think John Glenn as well. They wanted to reboot in the way that they did with Casino Royale and present it as either a reboot or Bond as a young man, to try and explain why he'd suddenly gone from being 55 to 40 or whatever he was at the time, Tim. But it was Cubby Broccoli vetoed it because he wanted to leave the impression that it was the same man who just existed on a sliding time scale, like MASH. Sorry, completely off topic here, but I love MASH. It's brilliant, but the time scale of that thing bugs me. 11 series into a 3-year war. No. Anyway, that's for another day.
So just for clarity there, James, in your parting words, really, Cubby Broccoli believed that it was the same character, not a code name theory. So there we go.
I think
right,
at least up until the end, until Dalton, and because GoldenEye is a Dalton film with Pierce in it, I'll say to the end of Die Another Day. The intention is, although the dates that you're looking at gravestones and newspapers and all the rest of it, you are supposed to take with a pinch of salt and believe that they perhaps shift over time. It's intended to be the same guy. and the people around him are supposed to be the same people. We just, if you were in a theatre, you'd accept it. The willing suspension of disbelief, as they say in Blackadder. But because it's on a movie, we want to believe it's real, and we want to find reasons for things. So that probably just speaks to us as audience goers.
But I tell you what, we'll discuss that in another episode all by itself. And on that,
we've sort of touched on it before, haven't we? When Rob was on about with on a Majesty. So yeah,
I was going to say on that bombshell, but we haven't scored it. This will be interesting.
We haven't.
Get your calculator out for this one, Ed. I think you're going to need it because we're not going to be giving it all 10. I can tell you that much. Right. So, Ed, we're just going to give this. No, do you know what I'm going to give? Ed is going to give this an 8.5, 9.
Ed's going to give it a 9.
Oh, there we are.
It loses 1 point for the sin of not having Roger Moore. That's the only. Yeah.
Okay. James?
I'm struggling a lot because the flaws are too big to ignore, and I have to mark it down for the flaws. But it's so goddamn enjoyable. Okay, head or heart? I'll go 6.5.
I'm going to go for 7.
7.5.
Well, I think on balance, you could probably take that, Ed. I think.
Yeah, I'll take that every day of the week because I know it's not one of the best loved ones. So, where is it on IMDb? How far off are we?
It is. I think it's like 6.5. Let's just double check.
Yeah.
No, Ed. Let's not think. Let's be precise because we like our facts and we like our accuracy. As we go, every week. Yeah, probably. Yeah. 6.5. Yeah, 6.5.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're far off.
And I'm that intrigued now by the book. I'm going to go on eBay when we finish and buy it as well.
Nice one.
See what it's like. I've only ever read one Bond novel before. I've only ever read from Russia, and that was in the 80s. So I'm going to give that a go.
Russia with Love is one of the best. It was Kennedy's favorite book, or one of his favorite books. I think that's why they filmed it when they did.
Well, what I'm going to do, I'm not a reader. There is an audio play, isn't there? With
Michael Jaston did one. Did Michael Jaston do Diamonds? I can't remember.
Who's the chap that's but the only trouble is I'm not sure whether it's actually based on the book or whether it's probably not. It's probably not, is it? It's probably based on the film. But anyway, I'm going to look into that. So yes, well there we are, Ed. You'll be able to pick that up fairly cheaply, I would imagine, and you can report back with your thoughts afterwards.
I'll do that
on another. I was going to say another episode. I'm not sure Diamonds of Forever deserves 2 episodes. So Ed will just tweet about it instead.
Yeah.
And on that bombshell, we've been Bowties Sometimes Cool. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.